When you think of the world's richest people, you think of the super elite, the moguls with wealth the majority of us can't even fathom, let alone comprehend. You think of people who make millions by the hour and own not only the most luxurious private jets, but the airlines themselves. Now, while our favorite celebrities brag about buying the latest Rolls-Royce or Bentley, the world's super elite own Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Such is the disparity in wealth between these classes. When you scroll through the top 10 billionaires list, the elite of the elite, you soon find one common theme. Most of the names here, from Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, and Elon Musk, you name them, are all founding members of their own companies. They drafted the plans and took the incredible risk to start from the ground up, and as such the wealth they have now is justified in a way. This theme continues right until you get down to one man, Steve Ballmer. He does not fit with this generalization. Steve didn't found any of the great companies, if anything. He spent the majority of his years as a regular 9-to-5 employee at one. How did this man go from a regular 9-to-5 Joe making $50,000 a year to breaking boundaries of generational wealth to become known as one of the world's richest men? What shortcuts did he take and what mountains did he scale? These and more are the questions we aim to answer today as we talk about Steve Ballmer, the 9-to-5 billionaire. Steve Anthony Ballmer was born in Detroit, Michigan to Frederic and Beatrice Ballmer in 1956. Growing up, he did not have as luxurious a life as he enjoys now, but his parents strove to provide the best environment to ensure their son's success. Regardless of this, Steve was a brilliant academic with a particular affinity for mathematics. It is this intelligence that allowed him to be a valedictorian of his high school class and to graduate magna cum laude from Harvard with a degree in applied mathematics and economics in 1977. It was here at Harvard that the seeds for Steve and Bill Gates' lifelong friendship were planted. After graduation, Steve went on to get a job as an assistant product manager at Procter and Gamble, where he worked for 2 years before going back to school to get an MBA from Stanford. During the following summer, Steve approached Bill Gates seeking a summer internship, to which Bill Gates countered with a permanent position at his company. Being a forward thinker and with a solid resume under his belt, Steve agreed, and in 1980 he joined Microsoft permanently. His decision to join Microsoft was not met without opposition. At this point, Microsoft was not the tech giant it is now, and so there was several risks associated with this venture. His father even famously remarked, "What the heck is software?" But as history would now prove, that was the best decision of his life. Steve joined Bill Gates on a $50,000 a year salary and he started to get to work. In his early time, Steve was more of an assistant to Bill Gates than anything else. His responsibilities including hiring, HR management, and even cooking and cleaning where necessary. It did not take long, however, for Steve to make himself a crucial part of the company. You see, as much as Bill was the heart of the company, Steve, being the only full graduate with experience, had the office running like a well-oiled machine. Bill, who had been used to doing everything on his own, found himself delegating more and more to a highly skilled staff that had been hired by Steve. The same year, Steve was pivotal in the negotiations with IBM, securing a contract that enabled Microsoft to begin what was essentially its unchallenged era of dominance. This deal is what enabled Microsoft to run its software on all IBM computers, with IBM being the largest manufacturer of the computers at this time. When Steve Ballmer had started at Microsoft, his hire had come with 4 conditions. These were the title of business manager, a $50,000 base salary, 0 equity, and the last crucial one was that Microsoft would give Ballmer a 10% of the profit growth he could generate. The last one soon proved to be a headache as Microsoft began growing at an incredible pace. By the very next year, 1981, revenues had substantially increased to $17 million with the promise to increase even further. At this point, it was clear that Ballmer's 10% of profits deal was not sustainable, and to alleviate this problem, Bill Gates and the other co-founder Paul Allen opted to give stock shares to Ballmer in exchange for waiving the 10% profit split clause. Ballmer wanted 8% stock, but Paul Allen was only willing to concede up to 5%, so Bill Gates indeed ended up making up the difference with his own pool of equity. That is how Steve Ballmer found himself with 8% of the company's stock, half of which he still holds to this date. In 1986, when Microsoft went public, this 8% stock in his pocket solidified Steve as a multi-millionaire. Barely 6 years since he had joined the company in the company structure, he still played an influential role in several other departments throughout the years, and was promoted to the president of Microsoft, a position he held until 2000 as Microsoft's number 2. Just as Steve had a meteoric rise at Microsoft, you can have a meteoric rise as a loyal viewer of my small but growing channel by hitting the like button. Every like means a lot to me and helps the channel tremendously, as it's still very small and unnoticed by the algorithm. Back to the video. After Bill Gates stepped down, Steve Ballmer became the CEO of Microsoft in January 2000. At this point, Microsoft was at its peak, but the turn of the century held an ominous look for every large company, as many were soon to find out. His reign was wrought with many challenges right from the onset. First off was the dot-com bubble. Microsoft saw a sharp decline when the bubble burst, especially since it was a tech company, with Microsoft Windows 95 being in almost every home. Within his first 2 years, the stock price crashed over 60%, and it was left to Steve to clean up this situation in the best possible way. Also, not least on the agenda was the mountain of legal cases against Microsoft. When Steve Ballmer took over as CEO in 2000, the company was facing lawsuits from what seemed like the entire world. Among those suing Microsoft were the US federal government, 40 US states, 30 countries, and a number of the company's tech competitors, for various antitrust and patent-related allegations. Microsoft's success had served as a beacon of lawsuits, and as time went on, these issues dragged the company down. Bill Gates had opted to fight these cases, believing in the justice system, but when Steve became CEO, he sought to settle. His thinking was aimed at the bad publicity that Microsoft was starting to get, so he wanted to solve those cases as quickly as he could and move on from it all. He did this at the expense of billions of dollars to the company. All this served as a rocky start to his reign, but Steve, who was insanely determined to succeed, kept soldiering on. Ballmer introduced new systems when he became CEO, many of which led to the incredible success that Microsoft is today. A little while into his reign, he pushed for the creation of a gaming console, the Xbox. At that point, Microsoft was largely known as a software company, so the decision to dive into hardware was met with a lot of resistance from within the company itself. However, Steve Ballmer stuck to his guns. The early development of Xbox saw the company suffer waves of financial losses due to several technical difficulties, but Steve never ceased to support and push the Xbox agenda. When it finally hit its stride, the Xbox proved an invaluable asset for Microsoft, with the Xbox One selling over 2 million units the first 18 days after its release. To date, the Xbox is one of Microsoft's most popular products, and a whole market has been leveraged off the console. Steve Ballmer also famously pushed Microsoft in the direction of providing software and services to enterprise customers. Like many of his innovative ideas, at first there was resistance to Microsoft's offerings from those who saw the company as traditionally consumer-oriented only. However, with the success of this idea, the company shifted its perspective. Now, its dynamic CRM, customer relations software, and SharePoint collaboration service have been widely adopted by corporations, and Ballmer's skill at deal-making has even led to a joint venture with Oracle in the form of the Azure cloud service. Azure now makes billions of dollars for the company and continues to prove more valuable every single year. To date, enterprise customers now supply more than half of Microsoft's revenue, an excellent result from a bold move. In 2009, under his direction, Microsoft also expanded into the search engine market, releasing Bing. In that same year, Microsoft brokered a deal with the internet portal site Yahoo, in which Yahoo would use Bing for its website and handle premium advertisements for Microsoft's website. A few years later, Skype was also famously purchased in a whopping $8.5 billion deal. Even though there's been a debate as to the utility of Skype in the larger picture, the company managed to not only keep it out of competitors' hands, but also use it as the base for its future innovations, like the replacements of MSN Messenger and the development of Microsoft Teams. It also placed the company in competition with Apple's video chat service FaceTime and Google's internet communication service Voice. Steve Ballmer eventually stepped down and was succeeded by Satya Nadella in 2014, after more than 14 years at the helm of Microsoft. During his leadership, he was blamed for several missteps. Perhaps his most famous criticism is the failure to capitalize on several new consumer technologies forcing Microsoft to play catch-up in the areas of tablet computing, smartphones, and music players. In all these areas, had Microsoft acted first, it would have undoubtedly had a monopoly given the platform that it had built via Windows. However, after his tumultuous reign and the controversies that followed are put aside, it is hard to argue with the numbers, and the numbers tell a beautiful story for the former CEO. In the 14 years that he ran the company, Microsoft's revenue nearly tripled from $25 billion to just over $70 billion. The profits of the company also doubled from just under $9.4 billion to just over $22 billion. This solidified his reign as one of Microsoft's most successful periods, with the measures he put in place set to propel the company forward long after his departure. His legacy as a forward thinker is set in stone at the company. Ever since he got his feet planted, Steve Ballmer has always been very philanthropic, with his particular attention to education. In 1994, Ballmer and Bill Gates jointly donated $10 million to the Harvard University Computer Science Department. He repeated this action in 2014 when he again donated money to the Harvard University Computer Science Department to enable it to hire new faculty. In that same year, Ballmer also donated $50 million to the University of Oregon for scholarships, external branding, communications, and public health research and advocacy. This is on top of his many other private philanthropic works, which are no doubt just as impressive. Aside from his philanthropic deeds, Steve Ballmer is also the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, a super team in the National Basketball Association. Perhaps a great match when you consider his overflowing and bursting energy. Now, Steve Ballmer has been hailed by many names, from eccentric to passionate, with many viral moments over the years that can justify any of the names. He still stands as a beacon of what hard work can achieve. More than anything, his life tells the value of being in the right place at the right time, being smart enough to take an opportunity when one presents itself. His passion for Microsoft has never wavered, as evidenced by his energetic and exuberant personality. To date, he is the largest individual shareholder at Microsoft with 4% shares, surpassing even the co-founders themselves, and that is unlikely to change, as his love for the company seemed embedded into the man at this point. Steve Ballmer's ongoing life story is undoubtedly one for the ages, and perhaps more than anyone else in the world of the super elite shows that maybe. With a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work, you can do it too.